Howdy everyone, and welcome to another Tuesday user experience design tutorial or concept overview. I hope everyone is doing well today. And as far as today's topic is concerned, very briefly, I wanted to go over user flows and red routes, and the main purpose of this stream is to talk about Miro and how to use Miro to create flowcharts. I find using Miro a bit easier than using Figma, and while I adore using Figma for almost everything, efficiency is the name of the game, and so I'll show you how to use Miro to create some flowcharts. And of course, Miro has myriad other use cases. However, user flows and flowcharts are one thing that they do especially well, so I will mostly focus on that. But to begin with, we should discuss what user flows and red routes are. And I didn't add it to this slide deck. However, I should mention where in the typical design process you'll come into using your user flows and your red routes. You will, as a designer, you will begin to develop and use and test your red routes after your research, your initial research phases, and after your synthesis of your research. So you might have some empathy maps, affinity maps, personas, things of that nature. You'll still be in the discovery phase, but this is getting toward the end of that initial phase. And it comes before any sort of sketching or wireframing, wire flows, and definitely before your any sort of high fidelity designs, because you'll want a solid grounding in the screens that you need to make prior to actually creating those screens. It won't you'll have a lot of problems if you try to do it the opposite way around. And to begin with, user flows are a visualization of steps users take to accomplish a goal. Since there could be multiple ways of accomplishing goals, user flows can be pretty complex documents. You may have seen some flowcharts before that are so large that you have to zoom in multiple areas to get a full understanding of what a user flow might look like for any one specific task on a platform. Other times, user flows are fairly small and you can see everything all at once. They might not take up much space at all, or you can put them on a single whiteboard, for example. Red routes are the pathways that the majority of users take to complete the most common goals on a platform. In other words, red routes are user flows critical to the product. And the three big takeaways from this sentence right here is the majority of users and the most common goals, and then the flows are being critical to the product. And so with that in mind, we're talking about 90% of the users who are going to want to accomplish a common enough task. That's what you're going to focus on as far as your red routes are concerned. And when I was looking online earlier for some additional research, some words of wisdom concerning red routes, excuse me, I found this quote by Justin Baker over at D-Zone, who is quoted as saying, "Red routes are the critical tasks that deliver the most value to your users. These routes are the foundational user journeys that make your product valuable and typically capture 90% or more of your users' actions." And so, again, to reiterate, red routes are user flows that specifically focus on the largest block of users who are accomplishing the most common goal. And I have an example of what that might look like in a moment, so we can explore what a user flow or what a specific red route may look like. And I have one additional slide here, and just wanted to briefly discuss MVPs and how red routes fit in to the process of developing your MVP, or your minimum viable product. And as I've written here, MVPs should focus on delivering the most value to the user in the smallest, fastest possible way. Most value would be determined by validated learning, that is, testing of assumptions you have about your product, and red route identification. And as far as testing assumptions is concerned, you always need to remember just one of the cardinal rules, one of the things they teach you on day one of user experience design is you, the designer, you are not the user. And it's fallacious to think that your thoughts are like the user's thoughts, because as a designer, you see things differently, you see products differently, and as such, your idea of what the user needs and wants are very often a bit divorced from reality, and that's why you need to do tons of research and nonstop testing to make sure that you're on the right track. And that's because very often the user does not know what they want. Saying versus doing, very often you'll get two different, you can observe two different outcomes when you ask a user what they want or what they think they need, and then observe them using a product, or if you're in a usability test of an existing product, asking them how they would do something versus how they actually try to accomplish a goal. Often those can be two different things, and it's not deceptive or malicious on part of the user. It's an aspect of human psychology. Is very often we're not people are not often that well attuned to what they actually need, what they actually want, and through their actions, you will know them a bit better. And the third bullet point here says, or I guess is on that topic, only by studying user interactions can we be sure of where the value lies. And this harkens back, I guess, to all these are related, but that has a lot to do with the first bullet point. You are not the user, and so any assumptions that you have about who your user is, what they look like, how they're going to interact with your product, need to be tested. And very often, at least in my usability testing, I have found that it's the case that I'm way off target when it comes to understanding what the user wants. And you need to, again, test as often as you can, as often that it's as is feasible, to be more in line with your end user, what they actually need and what they actually want. And lastly, if your red routes are not based on user research, you could very well design a pathway or indeed a product that no one wants to use or even can use. And that is one of the problems of, it's not necessarily an issue of designing alone, because this can happen in teams, certainly. However, when you have to shoulder more of the work yourself, you need to make sure that you're doing adequate testing, and in order to make sure that you're staying on track with what your customer or your client, or in other words, what your user wants and needs. And so with that in mind, that is how MVPs and red routes, how they correlate to each other. And so now that we have a fairly decent, if not elementary, understanding of what user flows are for and what red routes are for, I'm going to go ahead and close Figma and jump into Miro. And I have Miro open here in a blank document, but if you go to Miro.com, which is M like mother, IRO.com, and of course I'm already logged in here, once you create an account, you'll be taken to your dashboard where you can either start a new project with a blank canvas and develop it how you see fit, or, as I would suggest if you're new to using Miro, create a board based on a template. And I have many templates up here at the top in their recommended template section. And so we have mind maps, Kanban frameworks, retrospective, flowcharts, which is the one we'll be using, and visual tables, and then of course many more based on community needs and others designs others have created for use in Miro. And as far as Miro is based in your browser, and like Google Docs and like Figma, it's very easy to add members to a team or to share your boards that you create on Miro with others in order to get feedback. They can leave comments, and so it's a very collaborative application. It's very useful in that way. And if I remember correctly, I think, as far as the price point is concerned, I'm not exactly sure what their paid tiers look like as far as how much how much they charge. However, if you are a single user, you can create up to 3 boards at one time that are not view only, and after 3, you will need to mark some boards as view only, and that's what I had to do. And so I've been using Miro since 4 months now, something like that. And as such, I had to turn some of my old boards into view only. However, that's okay because they were part of previous capstone projects, and as such, I don't really need to add anything to them at this point. I only infrequently use them if I need to take a screenshot of that board or possibly generate a PDF or export some other sort of file from that specific board. And so I have a new one that I'm working on for another capstone project that I'm currently working with, and I have it open here. It's just a regular flowchart. However, I scrolled to a blank area of the canvas so I can sort of start fresh and show you how you would use Miro in order to create a user flow, and then from that you could easily create a red route from that. And so Miro is it's incredibly simple to use, and by no means did I choose Miro as the subject for this stream because it's difficult in any fashion. I thought it would be useful to make some students or some new UX designers who may not be aware of it. And so this is what Miro looks like in the canvas. And as we can see, we have most of the tools located on the left, and we have some options including settings, information feed. We can export the board from some of the options at the top. We can also execute a search feature, as well as explore some of the various apps on Miro and some of the integrations we could add, which we won't be doing in this video, but that could possibly be a topic for a future video. And on the middle right portion at the top, we have some additional options such as timer in case you need to, if you have a time block that you need to rigidly adhere to. Timer is very useful. There are some voting mechanics. There's a presentation mode, which can be incredibly helpful if you are delivering information that you designed in Miro to a board of some sort, possibly stakeholders. Presentation mode is a great way to make it very professional, very presentable, as the name would imply. One can also add notes and access some more apps. And of course, far on the right, there is the share button, and we, of course, can copy and paste links to share with others so that they can see the work that we're working on. And of course, there's various states of permission that you can give different individuals depending on what you want to allow them to be able to do on your Miro board. And our main focus today will be on the left here. This is the toolbar. And of course, we have the move tool, or the select tool, I suppose it's called in Miro. We have going down from the top here. Then we have templates. We have the text tool. We have sticky notes that we can add to our board. So if you're familiar with using FigJam, it's a similar functionality. And then we have shape, which we'll be using a lot of, as well as our connection lines, which again, we'll be using a lot of that. Pin tool, and so the pin and the sticky notes are very similar to functionalities that you'll encounter using FigJam. We have the ability to add comments, frames, and we can upload the document as well. And then of course we have some more tools here which are beyond the scope of what we'll discuss today, but there's some incredibly, Miro has great UX. It's simple to pick up and use, but it's also very powerful under the hood, and you can do some pretty intense stuff with Miro. And of course we have undo and redo buttons, and as you'll notice when I move my mouse over any one of these tools, or actually any one of these options really. It has a tooltip that will give you a keyboard shortcut. So if you're more comfortable using the keyboard instead of clicking around to select each tool, there's definitely that option available to you. And just like with any design tool, you can become fairly quick at laying down various elements into the canvas. But more to the point, let's say that we want to create a user flow wherein we e-commerce is the subject. We're working on an e-commerce platform, and what we want to do is create a visualization of the user flow for the checkout process. And we could, of course, start mostly anywhere as far as we want it to start. You don't necessarily need to start from the beginning. Sometimes when I'm creating a user flow, I'll start in the middle of the process and then build off of that to the left, to the right, and top and bottom for that matter. But in this scenario, we'll go ahead and start with one of the, we'll start far to the left, so to speak. We'll start with a very basic page, the page that a lot of e-commerce will probably start on, which is the cart. And there are many well-established ways to identify using the various shapes in flowchart programs or flowchart apps or flowchart templates, such as the one Miro provides. And usually they're based on, again, they're just based on conventions. And so to bring up a list of shapes, we can select shape from the toolbar on the left here. And it gives us 9 of, I'm supposing, the most commonly used shapes. Of course, if we want more, they have an entire collection of shapes. We have here, if you click more shapes. However, I'm going to go ahead and close that. We're going to use just the basic shapes. And so the square, or a square with somewhat rounded corners, is usually understood to be shorthand for a page, or just a single site, or a single web page or app screen the user is on. And so let's see here, I'm gonna get rid of that. When you select a shape, in this case I'm going to select this top middle shape, your cursor will turn to the crosshair, and then anywhere you click you will create that shape. And on the shape that I just added to the canvas, we have a blinking cursor, so it is awaiting text input, because you'll of course want to title any page or any part of the flowchart. You'll want to title it in some way. And so because this is a page that the user's on, and specifically the cart, just looking at sort of we're going to start the checkout process. That's the flow that we're working on, is the checkout process. I will simply call this cart and just begin typing it. The default font is Open Sans, and of course you have a couple of options regarding font style, alignment, font size, so on and so forth. And I want to make that, let's see here, I'm going to make that bold. And I do want to change the color of the box itself. I'm not sure if there's any color specifications when it comes to conventions as far as what colors certain shapes need to be. However, I've been using black box with slightly rounded corners to as my page, or as my single screen notation. And of course, one thing you will want to do is create a legend somewhere, so someone who isn't familiar with necessarily your style or the style guide that you're using to base your flowchart on, you'll want them to be you'll want to let the user or let the viewer understand quickly which shape represents what. And so I've created my cart page, but on the side I'm going to start creating a legend. And so I'll press T to activate the type tool, click once in the canvas, and we have some very small type. So I'm going to go ahead and bump that up to, let's say 144. Type legend, press enter, and I'll move that over to the side. And as part of Miro's, again, very powerful, though it seems very simple, all the things you can do in Miro, but it's, it is very powerful stuff on the back end that allows you to do this. When you have a page, or a shape, I should say, selected on the canvas, you can copy and paste it. So I will do Command C and Command V, and wherever your cursor happens to be, that's where it's going to paste the shape or whatever element you have selected at the time. And so I have I have a copy of cart, and so I'm going to change the wording here and just have it say page. And as you can see here, when I moved around on the canvas, when I'm close to the text layer, I guess I could call it a layer, we'll see we have this blue alignment line that shows up, and that allows, and it's a bit sticky, and so we can align things properly. And so I'm going to I'm going to move the square with rounded corners over here to the side under the legend, and so we understand that when we look at our user flow, we can see that this shape and this color with this text represents a single page or a single screen in an app. And let's see here. So as far as the checkout process is concerned, so the user is at the cart. They can see everything that's in their cart, and they decide that they want to check out. And if they want to continue shopping, then they can return to the home page or go to a categories page or whatever the case may be. And that would probably be on the left. However, we're going to focus on the checkout process here. And so they're at the cart, and now we may want to introduce of course, depending on the research that we've done and what we've determined through validated learning is best, as the most value, we may have come to the conclusion that for usability's sake, the user would have an option, a multiple choice situation when they're in the cart and they want to check out. And that would be, should they log in to continue? Could they register if they're browsing anonymously or trying to check out as a guest? Or do we allow them to just continue forward without logging in, which is called anonymous checkout or guest checkout? And some e-commerce sites allow that, some do not. I know from experience earlier this week, I learned that, and I didn't think this was the case, but Amazon does not allow anonymous checkout. I think they may have in the past. I'm not entirely sure about that. However, you need to be a registered user of Amazon in order to check out. So to illustrate that sort of fork in the road that I guess has three, it's not exactly a fork, you can go one of three ways. I want to introduce a point into this visualization of the user flow where the user needs to make a decision or a decision is made. And that's not what I want, not sticky notes, there we go. Typically the shape that's used for decision is the diamond shaped, the foregone. And let's see here. You want to, and so you can click once and add it to the canvas, and I added this one. However, I'm going to go ahead and change that color to, I think I've been using orange mostly, and I don't want to, let's see here, I do not want a stroke on that, and so I'm going to go ahead and make that a little bit bigger. And of course I can constrain the dimension by holding shift like you do, or like you can in many vector-based design software. So it's handy when a lot of these keyboard shortcuts translate from one app to another. And when I have this shape selected, I can click once on it and start adding text. And as we saw with cart and page, if you are familiar with Figma's auto constraint functionality, there's something similar to that going on, so you don't need to spend a lot of time making sure your text is flowing appropriately. If it's not flowing appropriately, you can just make your shape taller or wider or both, or whatever the case may be. And it usually plays ball most of the time. So in this decision shape, we're going to type login, register, or guest with a question mark. And that's going to be the decision, and there are going to be some points that come off each one of these corners. And because I created a new shape, I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it in my legend area right here. I will change the font, or I'll change the type inside to say, we can say choice or user choice, something like that. And of course I want to make that a bit a bit smaller. And in order to show relationships between each individual shape or page choice, modal, pop-up, whatever the case may be, we'll use the connection line over here on the left in the toolbar with the keyboard shortcut L. And when you click that, and you can select one of a few different arrow styles here, you'll notice that when you have this tool selected and you have the crosshair mouse cursor, if you mouse over on any shape, it'll show, they're not handles, but it'll show 4 connection points based on the type of geometry, the type of shape that you've added to the canvas. In this case, it's on the top, bottom, left, right of the square, and it has 8 points. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 8 points of contact on the foreground here. And if you click and drag from any one of these points, when you have the connection line tool selected, you can, for example, click and drag from one point to another to create a connection point. And it has a bunch of when you complete the connection point, it shows you options for the line or arrow that you just drew, including the type of line end, if you have a special type of arrow that you want to use, as well as you can control it's difficult to see because this information box is on top of the image, but you can control, it's on top of the canvas rather, you can control the size of the arrow and whether it's always straight or it breaks at 90 degrees or if it's more fluid and curvy. And I'm going to give it some width. Is kind of airy, or it's very thin when you first draw it. And so I'm going to change the style, and of course you can change the color as well. And I'll click out to, actually that's not quite large enough. I'm going to bump that up a bit there. Let's see here, maybe a bit more. Yeah, something like that. You can create an arrow between two shapes, 2 elements. And of course, since the arrow is linked to the elements, if you want to, let's say, move your shapes around, you can click on it and move it around like this, and you can see that it maintains the connection. And so I'm going to move that a little bit over to the left to give myself a little bit of space. And of course, you can click on the connection line to bring up the options panel here again. And you can, a very important thing to remember, and my suggestion would be try to label your connection lines as best you can. So if you click this plus T icon with a tooltip that says text, if you click that, you can, let's see here, let me select that again. Yes, if you select that, you can, let me zoom in here, you can begin adding text that will appear on, it'll appear on top of the line, and it'll have it'll break up the line a little bit so you can actually read the text. In this case, let's see here, I'll type in user decides, and that looks good to me. Ooh, let's see here, that was actually a comment, there we go. Let's try that again. There we go. And so you can add text between your points. You can interrupt the line to add text to it. And that is a little bit difficult to see, so I can click on it once. And once we have text added to the connection line, we can, of course, adjust the font size by using these up and down arrows here. And that's not the best wording in the world, and I might not necessarily add text there. However, that is how text is added to a connection line in Miro. And so we have this choice shape here, and because we have 3 different options, I'm going to have 3 connection lines coming off of, or I'll have a number of connection lines coming off of the different points on this shape. And we can sort of start to map the flow. We can at that point we'll be able to get a greater understanding of the various pathways a user can take to get to the same goal. In this case, checking out and completing everything they need. And so in this case, let's see here. I'm going to combine in my design. I have decided already ahead of time that login and register are going to be that choice is going to be serviced by one functionality. That is to say, when the user on the cart taps or clicks login or register, it's going to have the same effect of bringing up a modal or a pop-up with the option to log in or register, and it's going to be just a very simple form. Verification will be sent to the user's email, and so we can make sure that we have we can have secure authentication. And so with that in mind, I'm going to use let's see here, and you can choose any shape that you want to choose as long as you stay consistent and as long as you add it to the legend so that everyone knows exactly what you're talking about. And so, for example, I could have a triangle, and I can make it this blue color right here, and that's going to represent a modal. And I'm probably misusing the shape. I'm sure it has there's a convention that specifically says triangles are to be used for this. However, I haven't got these all memorized. So I have a blue triangle, and if I click once in it, I can add text, and it will be the text here will be login or register modal, and I can see that my shape isn't quite large enough to accommodate the text. So if I grab it by the handle, I can make it a bit larger. And let's see here, I'm going to drag it up a bit, make a copy of it to put in my legend. Whoop. It's just going to be called modal. Okay, and so now we're building a legend off to the side that allows people who aren't familiar with our design choices to understand what each of one of these shapes means. And let's see here, we need to have a connection line. Of course, we can't have shapes or pages or modals just floating out in the canvas with nothing to connect them to, with no connection to any other thing. And so the choice, I'm going to click and drag an arrow there. I'm going to add some text, and it's going to be login or register. And sometimes your text is difficult to see until you click out, and then you'll notice that when you click outside of the text addition tool, it will take what you've written and it will add the appropriate amount of space. It'll break the arrow into two parts, and so I want to increase the font size on that just a skosh, something like that. Okay, and then once they've logged in or registered, since this is a modal, it's not going to move them anywhere. They haven't actually changed pages at this point. And so let me close that. What I will do is I will make another arrow back to cart, and I'm going to change the type to dotted. And let's see here, I'm going to add some text that says, returns to, actually, it's going to say user stays on same page. There we go. And of course, you can play with exactly the bendiness or the arc of your lines that you draw. They're not set in stone. There's a bit of flexibility as far as your connection lines are concerned in Miro. And so we now have a bit of a flow starting to occur because we have multiple shapes going on here. And let's see here. Now I want to tackle what happens, or I want to visualize the part of the user flow when a user decides to check out anonymously, because that has been identified, at least in my design prompt, my design brief, as being incredibly important for the platform that I'm working on. And as such, I'm going to create a new page over here to the right of the decision diamond. And I could, of course, click the shapes tool and grab a new shape that way and click. However, it's going to use it's going to give it a fill color of the last fill color that you chose for whatever shape you've been working with last, which in this case is blue. I just assume keep it black to make sure I stay consistent with my legend. So I will select this page shape that I have here, Command C for copy, move my cursor over here, Command V for paste, and I can get it lined up perfectly. I can even get the distance to where it's equidistant. And so if I click once in here, I can change this to say delivery info, and I want to make a connection line here that not only shows that there's connection based on the choice and considering the answer to the choice, that's how we got here, but I also will give it text to make that abundantly clear. And as we can see, it's still using the dotted style, because that was the last style that I used when I showed that the user stays on the same page after I created this modal shape. And so to change it from dotted to solid, I would click on the type option and select the line type option. Thank you, tooltip, and select the lower left option here, which is just the solid line. And let's see here, I want to add some text, and that's going to say, not anonymous, that's too long. Let's make it say guest. There we go. And let's make our font size a bit bigger there. There we go. And so this means that the user was in the cart, looking at the shopping cart, and of all these three options that they could have to continue the checkout process, they chose to check out as a guest. And so at this point, we're going to start, let's make that a bit wider, zoom in a bit here. We're going to start the process of what it looks like to check out as a guest. And the process to check out as a guest isn't that much different than it is for the checkout process of someone who's registered and logged in. There's only a few more questions to ask. And for example, if you shopped on Amazon, you may recall that Amazon keeps, you can tell it not to, I believe, maybe not, I'm not sure, but it'll keep track of your billing information, shipping information, and credit card number, and all you need to do is take a quick glance at it and say, yes, that is correct. And so you don't need to fill that out every time. However, in a guest checkout procedure, that's not going to be the case, because ideally in an anonymous checkout, the system, none of your information is saved to a server outside of what needs to be saved to complete the checkout process, the purchasing process. So that's an ideal scenario. And so for the guest, we start with the delivery info. I want to make a copy of that page, and I'm going to paste several copies of that page, and I'll show you the reason why I chose to do that momentarily. And let's see here, so delivery info, and then after that we have the billing info page. After that we have the, can't spell today, or any day, payment info, and then below that we will have another page. So we'll do order review, and then below that the last step, which isn't really a step, I should say it's the last screen. It'll say we'll have the confirmation screen, which is, thank you. We'll have text on the screen will say something like, thank you for ordering with us. An email will be sent to your account with shipping information once the item has received shipping information, once it's been scanned in. And so to show the progression between these screens, I will select my connection line tool, and you'll notice that I put these, that's not what I wanted. I put all of these boxes close together. In this scenario, I'm not going to add any text on the connection line itself, because it's fairly self-explanatory, which again, that's not a great assumption to make. However, those familiar with a checkout process will understand that these pages go in a stepwise fashion. You fill one page of information out before moving on to the next. And so using the connection arrows with this same sort of shape indicates that this is sort of a stepwise process that the guest is going through. And so this is how the guest checkout procedure would look like. And of course, none of this information would be saved, because there's no account to tie this to, as the checkout method is anonymous or guest. And so what would we do if at the decision point we were logged in, or we were registered, and we did not want to go the anonymous route? Well, let's see here. We could add a different page that would say something like, let's see here, we'll call that confirm information. And a page like that would be similar to what you would see on Amazon, where they save your credit card information, your billing information, your shipping information, all that good stuff. And it would be wise to let the user, if they shopped with us before, it would be wise, it would be good practice for everyone, and it would be safe for everyone to allow the user to take a quick look at the information they put in previously to make sure that none of it changed. For example, let's say that whatever company this checkout process is meant to represent. Let's say that the user, they logged in, they registered, they've ordered through this company before. However, it's been a few months, and in that interval, the credit card that was used and saved on file, let's say that it expired, as they do every couple of years, and the user has a new credit card, but they haven't updated that information on the platform. Well, it would be responsible of this platform, of this company, to allow the user to take a look at the information that they're going to submit, including the billing information, which includes the billing address and the credit card number, CVV number, as well as the expiration date. We need to allow them to see that, because that gives them an opportunity for a number of, for any number of reasons that they need to correct that information, and that has a multi-prong effect. One being it reduces frustration and annoyance on the part of the user, because if they try to check out and the credit card processing system on the back end throws up an error and says, "Whoa, this card is not valid. We can't use this." That's going to force them to have to put more. That's going to force them to have to change their information when they should have. When we should have given them that opportunity to begin with. And so it's additional steps. It's wasted steps they have to perform, and that would also reduce. So not only does it aid in usability for the user, it aids in not wasting time for the company, because the idea is, if a company, let's say they have a call center, they're large enough to have people who answer the phones for customer support. If you did not allow people to see any mistakes that you're going to go forward in the processing scheme of things, you're going to increase the number of calls to support. And the idea is to reduce the number of calls to support to as few as possible. And so by giving the user power, by giving them control of seeing what they're submitting, we reduce the frustration on their end, and we reduce the number of incoming calls to support, which lowers the cost incurred therein, because those calls are not free. And so we're going to add a connection line. I pressed L too soon, so I'm going to press L to, let's see, I'm going to select my arrow tool and connect it from this angle to this angle of this shape to this shape here. I'm going to add some text, and it's going to say, let's see, logged in. Okay, very good. And then I want to show that there's a connection between confirm information, that's to say everything looks good here, and they want to continue on. And so I'll select my line tool or my connection tool again and draw a connection between these two pages here. And the text is going to be confirmed. And by that, you can use whatever wording is best, but confirmed in this case not only ties into the language used here in the shape designated for for the page type. Confirmed would mean in this scenario that the user has taken a look at the information that we gave them that says, here's the information you used last time. Is it still okay to use all this billing, shipping information? And if they say yes, that's fine, we will then take them to the order review page. We don't want to. We're not doing a one-click buy scenario in this project, and so we're going to take them to the order review page, which gives them which gives the user a view of the subtotal, taxes. It's going to display everything that they've ordered in case they might have forgotten something, or if they see, let's say that they were purchasing a shirt or some sort of apparel, they might see a picture of the shirt and say, oh, I meant to order that in blue, not red, or whatever the case may be. So all of these things, the confirmation of the order information that we have on the server, as well as the order review, gives control to the user to know what they're doing, and it reduces the number of possible phone calls that would come in to not technical support, but to just support in general. The last thing you want is a customer who's irate, having ordered possibly a very expensive item, to call up and say, please, cancel that now, or having to call their bank or their lending institution in order to cancel an order that's gone through, because that's for one, that there's a chargeback fee involved. And so this thing, by minimizing points at which errors can occur, or at least doing a good faith effort in putting in sort of bumpers where you're less likely to have the user encounter errors. You're also reducing the amount of not wasted money, but money that could be used for other things like R&D or raises or any number of things that they are. Like I said, it costs money for the company when someone calls to request support. And so it also makes the user happier knowing that they can see what they're about to, an action that they're about to perform, so they can double check it themselves. And so once they've confirmed it, they're taken to the order review, and at that point they would click the buy button, and then they would get to the confirmation page, at which point, let's see here, they could either return to the home page, which would be somewhere here over on the left, or they could, we might have a link on there that says, we might have text on the body of this document that says, thanks for ordering, your order number is so on and so forth. We've sent an email to the address on file, because even in anonymous checkout, you will collect an email address because you will want to send a receipt. That's, I'm not sure if that's a law thing, but you send a receipt. It's going to keep everyone happy. Receipt has been emailed to you at whatever email address. Continue shopping, and then offer them a link that might return them to the home page, or a page with this month's special deals, or whatever the case may be, or maybe special offers for returning customers, something like that. You could keep them in the loop of interacting with your platform. And so this is a admittedly very simplified user flow of what a checkout process might look like. Many checkout processes are different than this one. And if you want a good way to test this out, or to visualize how other companies do different processes, it might not necessarily be a checkout process, is to go to a website, go to a platform, visit some sort of service, and as you go through the various pages, accomplishing a goal, whatever that goal may be, it could be registering for information, or it could be, again, here, a checkout process, whatever sort of goal that you're moving toward on the app or on the website, that can be plotted out in a flowchart style in a program like Miro. You can recreate what a company, how their flowchart or how their user flow might look on their end. And it's an interesting way of visualizing how a company or how a product is designed. It gives you an insight into how their designers were thinking. And so that may be a useful way of either getting inspired, or possibly identifying strengths or weaknesses in another company or platform's user flow that you could capitalize on in your own product or platform. And that is it for this evening. I know this is, compared to my usual offerings, this is a rather short stream. However, I do have something coming up momentarily. And so, of course, if there's any questions about using Miro, any alternatives to this app or any other software, or if there's any questions or concerns about user flows, red routes, MVPs, anything like that, you know where to find me as far as the chat programs are concerned: Skype, Discord, and Slack. And of course, I'm on Twitch twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays, usually at 7:30. Today is an exception. And feel free to subscribe to me on Twitch, sign up for notifications so you receive a message whenever I go live. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their week, and I'll talk to you soon.